Hi, everybody. My name is Linda Abraham, and I'm going to be presenting the Reapplicant's Guide to Medical School Acceptance. I'm the founder and president of Accepted. I've been advising successful medical school applicants since the mid-1990s. And I have to say that it was interesting. Today, I actually was at physical therapy. I'm having a little problem with my shoulder, and the physical therapy isn't fun, it's painful. And the therapist was trying to distract me from what he was doing, which is yanking on my arm. And he said one of the things, he started asking me about how I started Accepted and, getting me to talk basically. And he said one of the things he loves about his work is hearing all his patients' stories. And that is indeed one of the things that I love about my work, but I do not cause you the pain that this guy was causing me. So in any case, I do love learning about my clients and their stories. In addition to my 25 years as a med school admissions consultant, I am the host of Admissions Straight Talk, and I've interviewed in that context medical school professors, students, graduates, and about 25 current and former admissions directors at MD, DO, postbac, and PA programs, including those at Johns Hopkins, Washington University, Yale, Duke, Baylor, Case Western, Hofstra, Loyola Stritch, SUNY Upstate, University of Connecticut, University of Vermont, Carle, Illinois, Kaiser Permanente, NYIT, Utah School of Medicine, Texas A&M, and others. And I want to thank you so much for joining me, for coming. I'm looking forward to sharing my 25 years of admissions consulting experience with you. But before we begin, I wanted to point out a few items that will help you maximize your time here and one that will help us improve these webinars. I'm going to ask a few questions during the presentation, and I may ask you to raise your hand in response. You can do so by clicking on the hand icon, two icons underneath the horizontal orange arrow on your control panel. That was number one. Number two, we're going to use the question window for both your, actually we're going to use it in this webinar, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to use the question window for your questions. We're going to use the chat window for you to post your answers to my questions. And you can do that so that everybody can see your responses, okay? Just post it to everybody. If you've not downloaded your webinar worksheet, this is number 3, take a second to do so. You can find it in the handout section of your control panel. My personal recommendation is that you actually download it and print it out and use it to take notes. I think that will help you follow along and get the most from today's presentation. When you leave, you're going to receive a brief survey. Please fill it out. We value your feedback. And finally, the item that I think most attendees are interested in or find most intriguing is the bonus offer we're extending to you today, $75 off our rejection review if purchased by February 15th, 2020. The coupon code is 2XCHARM, 2 times charm, and the URL is accepted.com/change-med-reject. So again, today is the 12th. This is good through the 15th, and that is anytime on Saturday, okay? But you can buy it before then too. Now, I always like to learn a little bit about my audience, and I'd like to learn a bit about you. So let's test your hand raising skill. Please raise your hand if you want to go to medical school if you want to go to medical school to pursue your dream career, becoming a physician. Please raise your hand if you want to go to medical school to pursue your dream career, becoming a physician. Okay, very good. Most of you are here for the right reasons. That's great. Thank you. And indeed, that's what this whole exercise is about. So while the focus of today's webinar is on the how of getting into medical school as a reapplicant, the purpose of this entire exercise and process is you're being able to pursue the career of your dreams. Now, I also have a couple of polls I'd like you to participate in. Number 1 is, how many times have you applied to medical school already? Again, how many times have you applied to medical school already? And the options are 1, 2, and 3 or more. Okay, so let's see. Let's see if we can't get the voting percentage up a little bit. I guess some of you may be here and did not already reapply, so that might explain, but we're at 55% having voted. Again, how many times have you previously applied? 1, 2, or 3? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, with 62% having voted. And again, there may be some people here who never applied before. It's 78% applied once, and 22% applied twice, and nobody has applied 3 or more times. Okay, that's fine. Okay, and then the next poll, and last one for now, is why do you think you were rejected? And on this one, you can choose all the elements that you feel could have contributed to your rejection. The options are low stats, lack of clinical and or research experience, poor essays, bombed your interview, or other. Okay, again, the question is, why do you think you were rejected? Choose all that apply. And the options are low stats, lack of clinical and or research experience, poor essays, bombed your interviews, or other. All right. Anybody else want to vote? We're at 65%. We're getting it up there. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to close the poll and share the results. So 65% said low stats, and 35% said lack of clinical or research experience. 15% said poor essays. 35% felt that you bombed your interview. And 30% said other. I'd love to know what those other were. Maybe we'll discuss that a little bit later. Okay, let's move on. Now, the first thing you want to evaluate is, do you still want to be a physician? You've applied, you got rejected, a year, or if you've applied twice, 2 have passed. If you don't want to be a physician anymore, then you don't need the rest of this webinar. If you do want to still be a physician, pull up a chair and hold on to your hat because there's a lot of material to cover. There are 4 basic reasons for rejection. The first is you simply were competitive at the schools you applied to. The second is you failed to present your qualifications effectively. The third is you were a victim of the numbers and intense competition, a combination or 2 or more of the above factors. And we're going to dig into each of these 4 reasons in the webinar, as well as what you should do in response. So there are several different options, and sometimes you can combine them. One is change your target programs to those where you will be competitive. 2, improve your qualifications. 3, improve your presentation of your qualifications, which is particularly important for all the people who said it was poor essays or they bombed their interview. That's presentation of your qualifications. And again, a combination of the above. So let's start with the most obvious and the one that the 65% of you felt contributed to your rejection. One is that you weren't competitive at the schools you applied to. And frankly, academics are usually the first place to look. If you look at your GPA and the school's average is a 3.8 and your average is a 3.2, you have a problem. And you have your GPA is going to be a hurdle you have to overcome. If you have a very low MCAT, you have a problem. Again, you look at the stats. This is a screenshot from MSAR. You want to be ideally above average, but you really don't want to go below unless there were some very extenuating circumstances and everything else is utterly fantastic. Or perhaps if you're from a group that's underrepresented in medicine, you don't want to go below the 25th percentile for a school. And yes, the individual section scores do make a difference. They are examined. If both your scores and your MCAT are low, you're in trouble. And you probably want at least one at or above the average for your target programs. Again, unless you're from a group that's considered underrepresented in medicine or had some enormous challenges that you overcame to accomplish what you accomplished. You must provide evidence that you can do the work in medical school and not struggle. No medical school wants to admit somebody who can't pass the USMLE, who's going to struggle with the academics, who's going to incur tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt and be unable to finish. They just don't want to do that. So you have to give them the confidence that you have what it takes to do the work. So what do you do if you determine that your stats were a problem? How do you respond to this? Well, you can apply to programs where you are competitive based on your current stats. It could either be a less competitive MD program. You may want to consider DO programs. You may want to consider perhaps other clinical kinds of careers where you still will have the satisfaction of being a clinician, but it may not be as demanding academically as an MD program. Another option is to improve your qualifications so that you will be competitive. You could consider doing a post-bac program, for example, and if you do well, you'll show that you can handle the work. Many post-bac programs also provide MCAT support, that they provide instruction on how to improve your study skills. Some have linkages to different medical schools. You can prepare for and retake the MCAT. And if you do so, don't study in the exact same way you did last time, because last time it didn't work as well as it was supposed to. Up the ante on the prep. If you did self-study last time, consider taking a course, either online or traditional. If you took a course last time, consider getting a tutor, or at least a tutor for those areas where you had difficulty. The MCAT is important and it's hard. And you really, if you are prepping for the MCAT, you should view it as another class, a demanding class that you're taking, or a job that requires a lot of time. And when you're prepping for the MCAT, remember, you want to focus on what you found difficult and what needs to be improved, not just those areas where you did okay. The parts that are hard is what you have to work through. What about other elements that medical schools look for? Not just the stats, the MCAT and the GPA, which get so much attention and focus, and they do count and they are important. Well, there's a whole issue of clinical exposure. If you don't have it, get it. I have never ever talked to a medical school admissions officer or professional who said clinical exposure was not a requirement of medical school admissions. If the extent of your exposure, the clinical exposure consists of shadowing, then I suggest you seek a role where you're in a more active role, where you actually have some responsibility and are interacting with sick people and their families and other clinicians. You can become an EMT, a scribe, a phlebotomist, an ER volunteer, a clinic volunteer, a hospice volunteer, but something where you're going to really be engaging and benefiting others. If you're a shadow, the only one benefiting from that activity is you. And I'm not saying that you can't shadow. I'm just saying that it should not be your only clinical exposure. What about research? It is not required by all medical schools, but research-oriented programs will want to see it, and even less research-oriented programs will value it because there's a certain medical training and critical thinking that one learns through research. And then there's community service. Community service in a non-clinical setting allows you to show that you care. Medicine is about service and caring, and it will also enable you to reveal leadership and teamwork skills that are vital in medicine. Now, there are all different ways to get involved in your community, and it depends how you define your community, really. So the organizations on the screen really are just logos, okay? There are so many different ways that you can do this and get involved. It certainly doesn't have to be anything that you see here. Now, what if, again, going back to the typical causes for medical school rejection, what if you feel that poor presentation played a role? Either you didn't do a good job on your essays or your interviews. And, well, anyway, you can see the people there don't look very happy. All right, let's start evaluating different parts of the medical school application. The primary is about fitness for a career as a physician. So a few weeks ago, I spoke with a mom who was calling about her son. Her son had applied this cycle. Again, this was probably January. And she said he checked all the boxes. He has a great GPA and MCAT, and he's hardworking, and he even has a master's, and he has clinical exposure and community service, but he's just not confident of acceptance, and the mother didn't feel he did a great job in presenting himself through his application. So realize that medical schools, and she could be right. I haven't seen the application, so I don't know, but there's no question that we regularly see applications that could have been quite a bit improved without anybody actually doing additional volunteering or raising their MCAT or anything like that, just in the way they present themselves. And we help our clients with that. Medical schools want to see multidimensional human beings committed to service and caring for others. And that's what your application has to show. So do your personal statements and most meaningful experience essays show your motivation for medicine? Do they provide insight into you as a human being? Do the essays and activity descriptions complement each other and the rest of the primary application? Are your essays and most meaningful experiences well written, showing you as a professional who knows how to communicate, who pays attention to detail? All those things count. If you answered no to any of the questions I just posed, you have work to do in terms of presentation, and presentation or lack thereof probably played a role in your rejection. Now, what about the secondary? The secondary is not so much, obviously you're going to be showing fitness with the medical profession, but it's much more about showing fit with a specific school. So were your secondary essays generic and not specific to the school that you were responding to? Did your secondaries duplicate the primary application? Were they rushed and sloppy? Again, if you answered yes to the last 3 questions I posed, well, you need to change that next time around. You need to write secondary essays that are specific to the school you're dealing with at that particular moment in time. And you don't want them to duplicate the primary application. They should be going deeper or providing a different perspective if you are writing about something that was already discussed in the primary. And you certainly don't want them to be rushed and sloppy. Does your writing throughout the primary and secondary application show you can communicate? Communications is critical in medicine, both listening and conveying your thoughts and information clearly. Your essays represent your communication skills. It's very hard to be objective about your own writing. That's why most professional writers have editors. And as far as I know, the only person in terms of professional writers who rarely edited his own work and his work really needed editing was Winston Churchill. And I don't think there are very many Winston Churchills applying to medical school. Writing requires rewriting, and it reveals your attention to detail and your thoroughness. What you see on your screen now is a quote from an interview that I did as part of Admission Straight Talk, our podcast, with Jennifer Welch, Associate Dean of Admissions and Financial Aid at SUNY Upstate. She's been in this business for 30 years. And she, in this interview, just railed against the sloppiness that she sees in what was then a very simple secondary. Our secondary is pretty straightforward in terms of the questions asked. The secondary gives us information about applicants and also info about how they do things. Professionalism, attention to detail. If you make careless mistakes, such as errors in capitalization, etc., it's a red flag. Now, again, one mistake is not going to sink your application, but a pattern of sloppiness, yeah, it will. So what is effective presentation? For the written portions of the primary application, keep in mind this goal. You want to portray yourself as a multidimensional human being committed to service and caring for others. You want the admissions committee to be so impressed that they would recommend your application to others to look at and read, such that it would get millions of views if it was a video on YouTube, okay? For the written portions of the primary application, each element in your primary application should contribute to that portrait. For the personal statement and the MMEs, think of the acronym PAD, because that really encompasses the purpose here. Not padding, but PAD. P stands for provide a window into the real you. A, add value to the rest of the application. Again, if you're talking about something in 2 different places in the application, and it really shouldn't be more, go into greater depth in one, provide a different perspective, or perhaps on challenges overcome, but add value. Don't just duplicate. And then D, demonstrate your writing and communications ability. Now, we are constantly encouraging our clients to use specifics and anecdotes to prove the claims they make. Specifics and anecdotes add interest to your essays and differentiate you positively from those who use them, who don't use them, or who write in generalities. And that's your competition. You want to be telling stories, using anecdotes, and then balancing those stories with analysis that relates to why the incident is important and revealing. Now, for the primary, the key question is, why do you want to be a physician? And what qualities will make you a wonderful physician? For secondaries, it's how do the examples you provide answer the question and show fit with this program's strengths and mission. Just as I advise you to up your game with MCAT prep, this time around, consider upping your game by working with an accepted consultant who can provide the expertise, experience, and objectivity you lack and can certainly benefit from. Now let's move on to the interview. What if you think you bombed your interview? Well, obviously I wasn't there. I can't answer definitively, but I would say that if you received 3 or more interview invitations and didn't get an acceptance anywhere, I really would wonder about how you did in the interview. Again, in the interview, the focus is very much on fit. Interviewers want to see you as a member of their community and someone whom they would want to have as a colleague. If you didn't show fit by being able to express why you want to attend that school, you could have blown your interview. If you got rattled and showed your nerves, you could have blown your interview. If you came across as cocky or arrogant, God's gift to med school, you could have blown your interview. If they can't see you as someone they would want to have treating their family member, you did blow your interview. So you have to have, when you go into an interview, you have to have a credible, coherent reason why an interviewing school is the right one for you. Practice interviewing to calm your nerves and to ace your interviews, to have somebody telling you, boy, you gave a great answer, or you know what, that wasn't quite as sharp as it should have been. Now, what if you think you are a victim of the numbers, in other words, the intense competition that is part of medical school admissions? It is possible to be qualified and to do a reasonably good job presenting yourself, and yes, still get rejected. That's true. Competition is extraordinarily intense in medical schools. If you honestly believe you were competitive at last year's schools and also presented your qualifications well, I still may have some suggestions for you. First one, don't do exactly what you did last time you applied. It didn't work. You will also fail to show growth and maturation. The whole year has gone past, or almost a whole year, since you applied last time. What have you been doing? You're going to want to highlight whatever you've achieved in that past year, whatever you've learned, however it benefited you. Schools, if you do just basically submit what you did last time, schools will be impressed negatively by the lack of effort you're investing this time around. You may want to apply to more schools this time around. I would apply to any in-state program that you would consider attending, especially if you have an in-state discount as part of it. I'd also recommend that you apply earlier in the cycle and look, when you're looking at out-of-state schools, look at those out-of-state schools that are friendlier to non-in-state residents. Apply earlier in the cycle. This is particularly true if you applied August or later, even July or later. Apply earlier. Almost every medical school officer I've ever interviewed has said it's to your benefit to apply early. They all say they don't have, they do admit people who apply later, but there are just fewer spots. Ryan Gray once said on a Admissions Straight Talk interview that medical school admissions is like musical chairs, and I think he's right. It's very hard to be objective about something you've poured your heart and soul into, which is why I recommend a rejection review. But avoid the conclusion that you did everything right and that competition, a reality you have no control over, was the sole cause of your rejection. Focus on the elements that you can change. For most of our clients, we find that a combination of 1 and 2, your competitiveness at specific schools and flawed presentation of your qualifications, probably contributed, if they didn't cause, the rejection. The good news is that unlike when you say, oh, it's the numbers, I can't do anything about that, it's the competition, is you can influence your qualifications, you can influence where you're applying to, you can influence and change and improve the quality of your presentation. You can change all that. It may take time and it may take some effort. It's not easy, but it is possible. And you can reapply successfully when you do that well. Now, at this point, I'd like to ask you, what is the most valuable piece of advice, insight, or information in what was presented so far today? in the chat window, please. What was the most valuable piece of information, insight, or advice that you got from the webinar so far? We're not done yet. If you prefer the question window, you can post it in the question window. I was recommending the chat window. Also, if you have questions, by all means, post it in the question window. We got a quiet group here today. Okay, then I'm just going to go on. Oh, here we go. Duplicating the primary application, the secondary application is a waste of time. It doesn't add value. Great, Danny. I'm so glad you got that. Don't do what you did last time. Thank you so much. Don't do the same thing twice. I have to tell you that I was talking with an applicant a few months ago, and he was planning to make some very minor changes to his application and resubmit it this upcoming cycle. I was advising him against it, and he frankly got upset with me. And I the next day spoke with the admissions director and asked about that advice, and she said, "Oh yeah, that's not a good idea at all. You have to change. You have to show growth. You have to show improvement. Advice on applying early. Let's see, with advice on applying early and applying more broadly. Good. I'm glad that helped you. Most valuable piece of info was to be a person that the interviewer sees as someone they want to work with. You're very welcome, Avital. I have a daughter named Avital. But given that, how much do you charge for the primary? I said, we're going to get that in just a second. Anne, if you send your application in May and you plan to retake the MCAT in June, is that considered early? That's a very good question. We're going to get to that also. Okay, we're going to get to, you're asking some good questions now. All right, we're going to get to the Q&A in just a minute, and I also, Dr. Barry Rothman will be joining me for the Q&A and assisting at that point. Thank you very much. Now, we'd like to help you analyze what went wrong last time around and apply effectively this time around. I've spoken with hundreds, if not thousands, of medical school applicants like you, striving to get into medical school and overwhelmed by the work involved and perhaps rejected the first or second or even third time before they came to Accepted. We here at Accepted know how difficult and stressful this process can be, and we're here so that you can apply this time confidently and effectively, successfully to the best programs for you. To do so, you need the know-how supplied by experts, providing their expertise and experience to you as an individual, not in a group setting like we are now, and that implies individual consultant. Given the complexity of the application process and the stakes and the fact that you really want this to be your last time applying to med school, you need a guide who knows the process inside and out and who can support you through this grueling journey. You need Accepted to be your guide. With Accepted, you can access professional, expert advice, experience, and objectivity. You can save time. You can apply with confidence. And yes, you can apply successfully. We have the admissions experts, the guides, who can mentor you through the process so that you achieve your goal of applying confidently and successfully. Former admissions directors, staff members, post-bac program directors, and pre-health advising professionals who have been on the other side of the table evaluating applicants, and they can also guide you through the application process. Now, here's what I recommend you do. Visit accepted.com/change-med-reject. Choose a service that's right for you. Get the guidance you need to apply the high-level advice from today's webinar to your specific situation. Go from confusion to clarity and from doubt to confidence. Now, some of you may say, isn't Accepted expensive? Well, frankly, so is rejection. Our fees are clear, but the cost of rejection is just not quite as obvious, even though it can be significantly higher. So let's take a look at the risks of not applying with Accepted. The cost of reapplication can easily be a couple of $1,000s. a year of earnings at a much lower level than after you earn your MD or DO degree. And there's the potential that you could have gotten into a better program, however you define that, with greater lifetime opportunities and even earnings. You're at a crossroads now. You took the do-it-yourself approach last time, and frankly, it didn't work. Take a different route this time, a professional option for your professional future, your dream career. Every year, we work with applicants who took the do-it-yourself approach, and after getting rejected, decided that the second or third time around, they will work with Accepted. Now, we're happy to work with them. That's fine, but they would have been better off working with us when they first got in touch with us or when they first applied, and so would you. But enough from me. What do Accepted clients say? Here's a brief, small, tiny sample of feedback that we received from our clients who were accepted. The first one is from somebody who was actually accepted, I think, by December of this year. Hey, Sydney, I just found out I was accepted into the University of Kentucky's medical school program. They said my interview really impressed them. Thank you so much for all of your help, advice, and preparation, because without you, I wouldn't have been able to be where I am today. I can't emphasize how grateful I am. Thank you again. Or the second one on the page. I got into UVM this morning, so thrilled about the news. Thank you so much for your support throughout this process. I'm still waiting to hear back from other schools, but this is such a relief. This was from a reapplicant who was later accepted to Tulane and LSU. And here's another one. Hi, Linda. Working with Alicia has been an indescribably wonderful experience and one of the best investments in my life. Thank you so much for making this possible through accepted.com. Have a wonderful day, Joe. Now, Joe's a pseudonym. Joe was accepted in late December as a reapplicant. He followed Alicia's advice to both beef up his qualifications and improve his presentation. He worked hard, but he knew before New Year's that he was going to medical school, and he was thrilled. Now, we'd love to help you as we help those clients, the ones who wrote the comments you just saw, and thousands of other clients over the last 25 years. Now, you may not have invested in yourself like this before, but this assistance and your future is worth the investment. And remember, you can start with the rejection review, which can really change and improve your next application to medical school. So once again, this is what I recommend you do as a follow-up to today's webinar. Visit accepted.com/change-med-reject. Choose the service that's right for you, get the guidance you need, and apply confidently and effectively. And here's the bonus again, $75 off the Med Rejection Review package. This is valid through February 15th. The coupon code is 2 times charge to X charm, and the URL is accepted.com/change-med-reject. And now for your questions, I also want to introduce Dr. Barry Rothman, who you can probably see at this point. He is the former director of 3 postbac programs at San Francisco State. He's been an accepted admissions consultant for about 5 years now. I got that straight, right, Barry? Barry, do you hear me? I guess not. Let me see. He's not connected to the audio. All right. Rachel, can you maybe call Dr. Rothman, and because he's not connected to the audio at the moment, and he might have to just re-log in, okay? Because I don't hear him. Let's see. Okay, so now, okay. Now for your questions, we'll get Dr. Rothman. Do you hear me now? Nope. Okay, well, now for your questions at this point, let's start with, okay, yeah, do pose your questions. You're adding the question window, that's great. Okay. All right. Now, Anne asked, but given that, how much do you charge for the primary essays and the personal statement? What I have on the screen right now is our rejection review service, and with that, we would go over your primary, 2 secondaries, provide you with feedback and some suggestions going forward. Our initial essay package, which is just for the personal statement, is $1,160, I think. I have to look it up if you give me 1 second. And Rachel, can you also post the primary application package? And we do have a primary application package that's $26.15. Let's see. $2,615. It's flat rate. It includes advising and editing of the personal statement, the 3 MMEs, most meaningful experiences, and the activity descriptions. There is no time clock ticking on that. Again, it's for one primary application. Barry, do you hear me now? You hear me? No, he still doesn't hear me. Oh, that's too bad. Okay, so that was Stephanie. Did I answer your question? I'm also going to try something else while Dr. Rothman tries to join us. Next question is, that was not your question. What is your question then, Stephanie? Sorry, Anne, that was your question I was responding to. Did I answer your question? I'll get to your question, Stephanie. All right. Okay, so Stephanie's question, I'll tell you what, can I unmute you, Stephanie? Is that okay? You can just tell me your question. Okay, you can ask your question now, Stephanie. Go ahead.
Okay, so I was wondering, I was thinking about retaking the MCAT in June, but I wanted to start my application in May. I'm in Texas, and so the Texas application opens in May, as well as the DO application. So I was wondering, would it be too late to have a June MCAT with the application?
If you take the June MCAT, you're not going to get results till July. So especially for for ACOMAS, I think getting it in early is not quite as urgent as for MCAS. So I think if you were to get it verified in late July, maybe early August, I think you'd still be fine. I'm not sure about the Texas schools. I think they are pretty competitive, and I think getting it in early, it's not so much that you can't do it. Obviously, you can do it. The issue is, I think you would have a slightly reduced chance of acceptance. So it's not so much that, again, whether you can or can't do it, or you should or shouldn't do it. You have a choice to make. Do you want to wait another year and apply when everything kind of all ducks are lined up, but you get it in right away, or do you want to try this time and and take the reduced chance of acceptance for the chance of starting earlier? Does that make sense?
Okay, so maybe it would be late.
Again, these are not discrete categories. Okay, it's not like you apply on one day and you're okay, and you apply another day. It gets later. Spots are given out. Interview spots are given out. I don't think you'd be late applying at the end of July at all. But it's not going to be as good as applying in June. On the other hand, if your MCAT is low and you wouldn't be competitive with that MCAT, the thing to do is to retake it, raise it, and then apply in July. Okay?
Okay. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for the question. All right. Yeah, all right. Barry apparently could not. All right, let's see if Barry comes back. But in the meantime, let me look at some of the other questions. And Rachel, could you please, oh good, you did post the primary package. That was for Anne. What about changing the description of your activities? Tell you what, Molly, can I unmute you so we can talk a little bit here about that? Okay, Molly, you have the mic.
Hi. So I was wondering about since this is a reapplication that I would be doing, the description of the activities I had during college were activities I was doing that didn't really change. So I understand there's the aspect of presenting yourself in a better way, but I don't really know how much you can change describing what you did.
Okay. Well, I'll give you one example. Again, obviously I haven't seen your application, but let's say you said, I volunteered in a tutoring center. Okay. Or I would say that could be tremendously improved. And without changing what you did, you could write, I tutored 10 sixth graders once a week for a year. And their grades went from C to A. Every single one raised their grades from C to A. Do you hear how that sounds different? It's much more specific, it's much more concrete, and it's much more achievement oriented.
Okay.
All right. So what I'm trying to say is look at those activity descriptions critically and see if you can't improve how you present them so that they are more impressive. And if you, again, I don't know what you wrote in your activity descriptions. Maybe they were very achievement oriented and maybe you can't change them. But usually they can be improved.
Okay. Thank you.
You're very welcome. All right, now we have some other questions. Emily asks, is it okay to use the same recommendations, recommenders, letters when reapplying? I would like to see at least, again, some schools have different recommendations in terms of the number of recommendations also. Oh, Barry's here. Let me unmute him. Okay. Okay, Barry, thank you. Oh, you're self-muted at the moment. So unmute yourself and then I'll unmute you. Okay, Dr. Rothman's here. Okay. Old college try. Again, Dr. Rothman is the former head of post-bac programs, different post-bac programs for many years at San Francisco State. He has been an accepted admissions consultant for the last 5 years, and he is very, very knowledgeable and highly experienced. So let's go on. Emily just asked about, is it okay to use the same recommenders and recommendations when applying? What do you say to that?
I think it's good to change things, not radically change things, but as Linda pointed out, to show very specifically how you've improved. That's what the schools want to see. They really don't like seeing somebody reapply with essentially the same application because it'll be treated the same way. So you have to show improvement and you have to point out what you've done. So for example, you could say why you think you weren't admitted. I believe I wasn't admitted because my GPA trajectory was a little shaky and I didn't have enough clinical experience. And over the last year, I've taken 3 upper division bio courses, gotten A's in all of them, and have increased my number of clinical hours by 30 or 40. Something like that, very specific so that the schools can see that you've made a substantial change. And then, yes, I would like to see a letter from, say, one of the instructors of a course that you took during the last year, and perhaps an updated letter from somebody, and not just go with absolutely the same thing.
Right. I was also thinking, I mean, some recommendations you probably won't be able to update, but you want to have some that are brand new.
Yes. Yes, I agree.
Okay. So
can I add one thing, Linda? That
sure.
Sometimes it's wise to wait an extra year instead of, because you find out kind of late in the cycle that you didn't get in. And if you haven't made changes already, there's not a lot of time to make changes before the next cycle begins. And a lot of times the wise applicant will wait a whole year and really, really improve their application rather than going through the same thing again.
Okay. So Anne, I would like to unmute you so that you can ask your follow-up question. Is that okay? You're welcome, Emily. Let's see.
Hello,
Okay.
can you hear me now?
Yes, I hear you now.
Oh,
Sure.
sorry about that.
All right. So just a little background, because I don't think Dr. Rothman was here when I answered your earlier question. I thought Ann was asking about our initial essay package and the primary package. She wasn't asking about that. You were asking about the degree of change in the personal statement. Now go ahead. You can pose your question. I don't want to paraphrase it for you.
Yeah, that is exactly what I was asking. And sort of your answers to the other follow-up questions partially answered that as well. But specifically, how much does the personal statement need to change if it's already spoken to the motivation for why you're wanting to go into medicine?
I think that it would help to show, first of all, to acknowledge that you're a reapplicant, and then to, again, very briefly summarize why you think you didn't get in and what you've done to change. So you have to crowbar that into your personal statement and maybe cut a few other things out. I would be very careful about having exactly the same personal statement. I think that wouldn't look good. And it wouldn't show that you're acknowledging that you're a reapplicant.
So you wouldn't do that acknowledgement in some kind of a supplemental addendum like happens in some of the secondary applications where they have explain any
yes, you can.
drop
You should
grade.
do that. Yes, you can do that, and you should do that. But there's no guarantee that every secondary is going to ask you that.
Mm-hmm.
And so some acknowledgement. Yeah, if you get a secondary.
Right.
So I think it's better to preempt all of that and do it in the personal statement. It doesn't have to take up a huge amount of space, but it acknowledges the reality of your situation, and it shows them very clearly what you think was wrong and what you've done to improve it.
Thank you.
I also think, just if I can add a second, an item, Ann, that if you do the same, basically submit the same personal statement, you can't be discussing at all what you've done in the past year. And as Barry said earlier, you want to show that you are a new and improved applicant, because otherwise you're going to have the same result. You want to show growth, you want to show improvement, you want to show commitment to the process. And again, when I spoke about this one conversation that I had, and the applicant was very resistant to changing anything about his application, and he, like I said, he basically didn't want to hear what I had to say, which is his privilege, that's fine. But then I was talking to the admissions director, and I said, wouldn't he also be showing very little commitment to this kind of process, treating it almost in a dismissive way? He said, I got invited to interview, so I'm going to apply earlier this year. What do I have to change?
Right.
And she kind of laughed.
That makes sense. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for the question. Okay. We also have a question here. All right. Tatiana has an interesting question. I think it's directly in response to what you said. Can I unmute you, Tatiana? Let me see. Nope, she's not letting me. Okay. Tatiana's question is, why can't I find it right now? Oh, here it is. I heard talking, writing about, or even mentioning being a reapplicant is taboo. Is that true?
No, it's not taboo. In fact, I think it's a wise thing to do. But this shows that there's a lot of bad information out there. And I hate to say this, but sometimes the worst people to get advice from are fellow students, because they only have the experience of one application. And there's a lot of rumors that go around that are unfounded. And so a statement like that, could really hurt a lot of people. So no, I think it's quite the opposite.
I also would add that if you to the extent that you do address it, don't make your personal statement, an apology for the mistakes you made last year.
Right.
You can just say, look, I was disappointed I got rejected. That's perfectly normal. and it motivated me to submit an even better application. So I've done X, Y, and Z, and most of the application should be about what you've done to renew your commitment to medicine, to make you a better applicant and a better future physician. Okay, let's see. Any other questions? Yes, there are. Oh, there's one good one here. This is from Taylor. Taylor, can I unmute you? Let's see. Nope, he's muted himself. Okay, so then I will read Taylor's question. Would you consider being a pharmacy technician to be clinical experience? Also, how do you go about getting recommendations when you're no longer in school but working full time? Two good questions. Thank you, Taylor.
Yeah. Yes.
Want to go ahead?
Yes. I personally consider being a pharmacy technician a kind of clinical experience. You certainly see how the pharmacy works, and you see how information going in and out of the pharmacy happens. I would say the thing that might be lacking is contact with patients. And I think in one's volunteer and even paid experiences, it's really, really important to have some patient contact, because that's where you see how the medical system works. And it gives you a chance to explore your interpersonal skills and relationships. So being a pharm tech is great, but I don't think that alone is enough because it lacks patient contact. What was the second question?
The second question was, how do you get a recommendation when you're no longer in school?
Yes. Well, it's, of course, hopefully you contacted the letter writer before you left school, but if you didn't, do your best to contact them and make it clear that this is really important. You really need a letter. You're applying to medical school, and this is a very important way of supporting you. Sometimes a little guilt helps to get the letter writer to really pay attention. And of course, thanking them and telling them how much you like their course, et cetera, et cetera. I know personally I've at times gotten kind of stuck and in terms of writing letters, and getting some feedback from the student was really helpful. It reminded me, and most of the time they're very polite, and so it actually renewed our connection. So don't be too shy. And if you have to nudge your letter writer, go ahead.
But do it nicely and politely.
Yes, nicely and politely, and maybe a sprinkle of guilt, but yes.
A little seasoning,
Yeah.
a little seasoning of guilt. Okay. Now, let's see. I think that's it. I want to thank Dr. Rothman for joining us. I want to thank you, applicants, for your time, answers, questions, and participation, and wish you the best of luck with your applications. I also want to share a final thought, a story, and a question. When our eldest son was a baby, my husband and I went to an event where we met a former teacher of ours. He took one look at the chubby sleeping baby in his stroller and said, "This is an experiment that must be repeated." Now, applying to medical school and getting rejected is the exact opposite. It's an experiment that you don't want to repeat, or what you really want is different results. You need to evaluate what went wrong and change your application strategy and execution in order to have those different results. And now the story about a client who had very different results. Terry, not her real name, hired Accepted to work with her. She had applied previously to medical school and received one interview invitation, no acceptances. She had a below average MCAT and GPA for most allopathic medical schools. Second time around, she worked with accepted consultant Dr. Barry Rothman, who you've just heard from, who evaluated her application and helped her improve it. Result, she was invited to 5 interviews and accepted to 2 MD programs. Now, Terry did as so many others have done over the last 25 years. She accessed the objectivity, expertise, and experience that an accepted consultant provides. She's in medical school and donned her white coat. She's going to be an MD. Imagine yourself just a few years behind her, starting med school in summer 2021 and attending your own white coat ceremony shortly thereafter. She followed the steps on the screen. She got accepted to medical school, and so can you. Get accepted. Now, for those of you still here, I promised you a question also, and I do have a question for you, and I'd like if you would be so kind to respond to the question window. You're clearly interested in what I've had to say. You stay till the end and through the Q&A. Why are you sitting on the fence in terms of engaging with us on a one-on-one basis where we can help you so much more? And you can choose the question window or the chat window to respond. I really don't care. I have both open. Why are you hesitating, given that you're clearly interested in the advice that we're providing? Okay. The price tag, the price. Okay. How much do you think you're going to spend applying to medical school? Not sure I can afford it. Okay, bad experience with another consultant. Price. Okay, worried about the cost. Again, how many, again, does anybody know? Thank you, Anne. I completely understand the value of a consultant. Okay, so let's unpack some of this. Does anybody know how much it costs to apply to medical school? Anybody know? Barry, I'm sure you know.
It's multiple thousands of dollars.
Right. If you apply to 20 schools, it's probably about 3,000, 2,000, 3,000. If you know.
And then if you get
there's
an interview
travel.
invitation, you have to travel. You have to pay your own travel expenses and hotel expenses, or
Right.
sometimes you can get housing with a medical student. But it's very expensive, and there's no federal loans for that.
Right. And unfortunately, there aren't federal loans for our services either. I mean, I don't, that they definitely are expensive. Now, if you think about it, the price tag of the application fees alone are more than our primary application package. There's certainly much more than the rejection review. I think some of the advice that Barry and I have given here today, they in and of themselves show you the value that can come from having a knowledgeable, experienced admissions professional on your side. Okay, the cost of applying is $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 depending upon how many interviews you go to. If you can afford that, can you afford to just spend it without the guidance? So that would be my answer on the price tag. Now, Anne is writing here, also give structure to the process that can keep you on task and on time. You're right. I didn't even mention that. Now, some of the other, I really appreciate your input. Please keep it coming. Danny wrote, I'm still waiting to hear back from schools. I have had 2 interviews and have been waitlisted at one school. There are still more to come, but I'm thinking ahead. Okay, that is somebody else also is in the hunt. She has a wait list and interview and haven't heard from 6 schools and will reach out if I need to apply. Wonderful. We look forward to hearing from you. If you are in the hunt and you haven't heard back from other schools and you're just kind of thinking, what if I don't get in? I completely understand that you want to wait perhaps until you know for sure or until May. That makes perfect sense. Okay, that makes sense. Molly, you wrote about a bad experience with another consultant and the price. Now, you can try us out. There's 2 things I have in connection with your bad experience. One, you can try us out. Our minimum price is $330. You don't have to commit to an expensive package. That's number 1. Number 2, with Accepted, you can purchase a package, but we do offer refunds, partial refunds on packages that are not fully used up, and we offer refunds of unused time for our hourly plans. So anyway, that if you are hesitating because of a bad experience with another consultancy, I'm sorry you had that experience, but you can have a bad experience with a doctor and you still use a doctor. You can have a bad experience with any service provider and you still will need that service performed. So I don't think that should mean that all consultants are bad, just like not all doctors are bad, or all accountants are bad, or all painters are bad, or whatever it is that gave you the bad experience. Okay.
Can I say something, Linda?
Sure.
Am I
Go ahead.
still on?
Go ahead.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I've worked with lots of clients who initially purchase 1 hour. It's a really good way to check out to make sure that the client and I are connecting with each other. And 99% of the time we connect, but in the unusual circumstances that we don't connect, we have other consultants. So 1 hour is a small investment, $330. I know, well, it may not be a small investment, but it's a affordable investment. At least you could get a sense of the fit. And then if there's a good fit, then I think you feel more reassured that we can work well together. And I think it makes going forward a lot easier.
100%. Thank you for adding that. Now, another interesting response from Diane is that she is waitlist and she has one more interview left. She's waiting to hear back from the waitlisting school to decide on consulting, but not sure when to start consulting. Well, for some of you who have interviews, we do provide mock interviews and interview prep. So that's one option. And again, I had a conversation once with a mother who was inquiring about her daughter. Her daughter had an interview coming up, and she was complaining about the price. And frankly, I got a little bit frustrated with her because she was just going on about it. And finally, I said, "Well, look, fine, we're expensive. I know that, but you know what's more expensive than not paying for the mock interview?" She says, "No, what?" I said, "Your daughter having to reapply." Because then you're going to have to pay for the application fees again. She's going to be she's going to be living in your home, basically on your dime for another year, and she's going to start earning a doctor's salary a year later. She says, "Okay, fine. Where do I sign up for the mock interview?" That really was how the conversation went. So if you are waitlisted, we provide waitlist advice and guidance. Mock interviews, as I said, that is an option. And for those of you who are, as you said, as somebody said, in the hunt and considering a consultant, if they're not accepted this year, we do offer free consultations. Yes, I would recommend starting with a free consultation. Our success rate is over 80%. Indaline asked that question. Okay. So waitlist advice is $330 per hour. And there's a 1 hour minimum. If you don't use it all up, we do have a 1 hour minimum that's non-refundable, but beyond that, you can go as little as quarter hours, half hours, quarter hours. What about your other question? Let me find it, Pamela. I'm sorry. And your waitlist, what can you do for me as I am waiting? What we would do is review your waitlist correspondence and see if there's anything else that you should be submitting to the school that might just help tip the needle. That's what we would do. Would you recommend starting with a free consultation? Yes. Waitlist. What about my other question? Okay, I answered your question. Good. And if you want to work with Barry, you can either go to his bio and request him from his page, or in the free consultation form, just in the comments box, put that you'd like to talk to Barry, or Dr. Rothman. Any other comments on ideas why? Oh, there was one. I'm white and cannot beat the diversity issues. You know, we have white clients that get accepted. No pun intended there. So I wouldn't pin your rejection entirely on that. Okay?
If I could say something.
Sure, of course.
Sure, I understand the frustration, but I think that, one can contribute to diversity in many ways. And, it's not your fault you were born European American, but you can do things that make you more culturally competent. And you can write about your cultural competence, because I think the schools are looking for a diverse population of students, but they're also looking for students from the majority who are who are able to deal with a diverse population so that it's a safe environment at the school. So what I would do is write about my cultural competence and my experience with diverse populations. And of course, don't apologize for being European American. That's just how you were born.
That's not, yeah. Rachel, can you also post a link to our diversity advice? I look at diversity. I know that frequently it's referred to strictly in ethnic terms. However, I think there are really 3 ids to diversity. One is identity. That's the one that gets most of the attention. It's ethnic, it can be racial, it can be gender or sexual orientation.
Mm-hmm.
It's how you identify. The second id in my 3 ids is I dids. It can be achievements. It can be things that you've participated in, things that you've impacted, things that you've grown, things that you've initiated. Those also can be elements in diversity. And then there's ideas. That's the third id in my 3 ids. Maybe you are really an original thinker, creative mind. You have, or perhaps you're one of the people that's just gifted at building bridges between different groups. Some people are just really, really good at that. It's something that it's a knack and talent that they have. So don't think of diversity strictly in the ethnic way in terms of the first id and identity. Expand it. Think of it in terms of your approach to things. That's the third of the ideas, and the I dids, your achievements. Okay, I hope that helps, Pamela. And then let's see, Anne also have to if you want to work with us, it's very simple. Rachel, we want to post the link to the waitlist page, the services. You're very welcome, Anne. And with that, any other responses to my question about sitting on the fence?
I have something to say if there's
Sure.
no other
Go ahead.
responses.
Go ahead.
Yes, I don't know if this was brought up before, but being a third-time applicant, did anybody raise that issue?
There were a couple of people. I asked how many times people had applied previously. 80% had applied once and 20% had applied twice. Nobody had applied 3 or more times. So some of the people in the audience probably are applying for the 3rd time.
Yes. In my experience, a lot of people apply a 2nd time. And the hope is that you get it right the 2nd time and you don't just send the same application in. In my experience, the 3rd time it gets harder, that the schools are really wondering, why are you applying a 3rd time? And I've worked with a client who's a 3rd-time applicant. And the first 2 times this person applied, they didn't get any help and they basically applied the same way. And so we made a very strong case that this person had made a number of changes, and they humbly admitted that they were a rugged individualist and that they needed to get help. And they finally got help and changed a lot of things and sought advice from other people. And now this person has had 2 interviews. So it is possible to be successful on the 3rd application, but it's harder. And so you really have to show tremendous change, and you have to explain why you weren't successful the first 2 times.
Right. And for those of you on the wait list, I sincerely hope that you get in this time and either use our services just for wait list or interview prep, and you don't need to do the whole thing again. But if you do need to do the whole thing again, we're here for you, whether it's the 2nd time or the 3rd time. Okay, Molly asked one more question. You mentioned you've spoken with a lot of parents. Where do they come in when pricing is based on an hourly basis? Parents usually, I've spoken to parents about our pricing and our services, and that is where they come in. they purchase the service, they want to know what they're paying for. In terms of point of contact with the applicant, it's the applicant. We don't work through parents in advising. We work directly with the applicant. Okay. Pamela also asks, what is keeping most applicants out? That really, really varies all over the map. The beginning of the webinar, I went through the most common reasons for rejection. I didn't quantify them, and I'm not sure I really could. So if you missed the first part, I don't know, were you here then, Pamela? You're very welcome, Molly. Yeah, we're going to be sending a link out to the recording, and you can review that. I gave both the most common reasons for rejection and what you should do to change the results. I did answer Adeline's question, which was, what is our success rate? Rachel's apparently didn't hear me answer that. She's probably getting a link for us, but it's well over 80%. It's about 85%. No problem. Yes, go ahead.
I'd like to add that in my experience, the 20% that are not successful often are people who are applying too early, that they're applying prematurely, and that go against our advice, which is to spend another year. So we're fine if you really need to spend another year. I would rather see you be successful than to have you hire me and then wind up with an unsuccessful application. So you should think long and hard about, for the first time applicants, whether you're really ready, and maybe ask us to help you determine whether you're ready to apply or not.
Actually, Rachel, can you post a link to the Ryan Crane interview? Ryan Crane was somebody who approached us, and he talked to one of our consultants, not Barry, different consultant, and she advised him that he had work to do to really be ready to apply successfully, and he did it, and he was accepted, I think, in October. So I don't remember if he was a reapplicant right now. I think he was, but I know that she basically encouraged him to wait. All right, Pamela's asking, will you advise us what to do the year before the third application process? Yes, that's part of what we do. Absolutely. And we definitely got Ryan's permission to share his story. It's on Admission to Straight Talk, so you can listen there. Okay. And with that, I really, really want to thank you all for your time, your answers, your questions. I appreciate you sticking around, sharing your concerns at the end, and sharing your thoughts and answers earlier. You're very, very welcome. Barry, thank you also. I really appreciate your participation and assistance. You're most welcome. Thank you, Pamela. Yes, did you get the waitlist link? Rachel did post it, and she also sent it to you via chat. Can you post it again, Rachel? Got it. Okay, wonderful. Best of luck to you all. If you're waitlisted or not here yet from this cycle, I hope you get in. If you, whether you do or you don't, we're here for you. Get accepted.